Well, welcome back to our study of the book of Daniel. Last week, I asked you to read the entire book. I hope you were able to do that. This week, you'll focus in on Daniel chapter 1. I'll give you a few questions at the end of this video to think about as you read along in Daniel 1. But today, I want to tackle the question, what is the importance of Babylon in the Bible? Now, Babylon is first mentioned in Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 8. It's the place where mankind rebels against God by ignoring his command to disperse throughout the land. Instead, they decide to establish a city and begin erecting a tower that will reach heaven in order to make a name for themselves. You can see the arrogance of this goal. Their desire was not to honor God, but was to honor themselves. So let's go back and read Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 8. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from there all over the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. So this city called Babel became the location of the larger empire of Babylon. Now, Babylon today is located in Iraq. It's along the Euphrates River, about 55 miles south of Baghdad. So when we think of Babylon in the Bible, we should instantly be reminded of the rebellion of mankind. The very foundation of this city was based on man's rebellion at the Tower of Babel. It should be no surprise then that, and we could perhaps even say poetic justice, that God uses a future ruler of Babylon to punish his own people after a prolonged time of rebellion. Jeremiah tells the people that this will happen, and most notably, Jeremiah counseled the people that they should surrender to the Babylonians and accept God's will, God's punishment. We find this in Jeremiah 21, verses 4 through 10. So this is Jeremiah 21, 4 through 10. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. "I am about to turn against you the weapons of war that are in your hands, which you are using to fight the king of Babylon and the Babylonians who are outside the wall besieging you. And I will gather them inside this city. I myself will fight against you with an outstretched hand and a mighty arm, in furious anger and in great wrath. I will strike down those who live in Jerusalem, both man and beast, and they will die of a terrible plague. After that, declares the Lord, I will give Zedekiah, king of Judah, his officials, and the people in this city who survived the plague, the sword and the famine, into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and to their enemies who want to kill them. He will put them to the sword. He will show them no mercy or pity or compassion. This is what the Lord says. See, I am setting before you the way of life and the way of death. Whoever stays in this city will die by the sword, famine, or plague. But whoever goes out and surrenders to the Babylonians who are besieging you will live. They will escape with their lives. I have determined to do this city harm and not good, declares the Lord. It will be given into the hands of the king of Babylon, and he will destroy it with fire. So that was the prophecy of Jeremiah, and Jeremiah's words, in fact, came true, and that is evidenced by the book of Daniel. Daniel was one of those who surrendered and was carried off into Babylon. And indeed, Nebuchadnezzar did destroy the temple and Jerusalem and carried off the articles from the temple for his own use. The Babylon that Daniel lived in was a wealthy, heavily fortified city. It was, in fact, the location of the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And according to ancient authors, there was a river that ran through the middle of Babylon and split it into 2 parts. The city itself was surrounded by marshes and swampy areas, but it consisted of 196 square miles that were fortified with not 1 but 2 walls plus a 30-foot moat. The outer wall was 311 feet high and 87 feet wide. It was basically impenetrable. But you're going to learn in your study of Daniel that Babylon will fall into the hands of the Medo-Persians. This too was prophesied in the Bible. In fact, the entire city collapsed and essentially vanished until the 19th century when archaeologists found some remnants of the city. How did such a fortified city fall? Herodotus tells us that the Medo-Persians conquered the Babylonian Empire by marching their armies through the river that divided the city. They diverted the river. They were able to enter the city on dry land, and they easily conquered the unsuspecting and overly confident Babylonians. In 539 BC, Babylon came crashing down, and from then on it began to rot and decay. The prophet Isaiah foretold this in Isaiah 13. You might want to go back and read that. By 1611 AD, Trajan described Babylon as a pile of mounds. That was all that was left. And today, 45 miles south of Baghdad, ancient Babylon lies in ruin. It was never inhabited again, just as Isaiah said. So why did God wipe it out? Well, it was a land of idolatry. There were a combination of over 800 temples, chapels, and altars erected to over 50 different gods. Idolatry was at the heart of Babylon. Now, if we fast forward to the book of Revelation, Babylon is again mentioned. This time, Babylon is aligned with the Antichrist and persecutes believers who are being faithful. But this time, it's Babylon who will be judged. Here is how Babylon is described in the book of Revelation. Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. That's found in Revelation chapter 17, verses 3 through 6. Now, Revelation later records the downfall of Babylon, which surprisingly is mourned by the people of the world. That's found in Revelation chapter 18. But the remaining saints rejoice at Babylon's fall. That's in Revelation 19. So in the Bible, Babylon is mentioned from Genesis to Revelation. It begins with an effort for man to make a name for himself. Then, in great irony, the godless empire of Babylon is used by God to discipline his people. But this punishment was limited to 70 years. And after that, just as predicted by the prophet Jeremiah, God promised to punish the king of Babylon and his nation by making it an everlasting waste. That's found in Jeremiah 25:12. And he did this for all the wrong that Babylon has done in Zion. And finally, as a representation of all the evil being judged, Revelation 18:21 says, "The great city of Babylon will be thrown down, never to be found again." How ironic it is that when God needed to punish his people Israel, to purge them of their sin, he chose the most despicable and despised place on all the face of the earth, the place where evil idolatry originated, Babel. He chose that to be the place where they became captive. This is where Daniel and his friends lived, and this is where Daniel was able to maintain a faithful walk with God. What an example Daniel is for us today as we live in a culture that has many similarities to Babylon. Will we be found faithful?